I can talk in front of preschoolers, there we go, and middle schoolers. This is just not my thing. So hopefully we'll all get through it, right? So first of all, thank you for having me today. It's a privilege to be here, and it brings back so many memories that I had when I was your age, and MOPS was such a big part of my life. And I would not have gotten through what I went through truly without MOPS. So I encourage you all to stick through this Moms Together, because it will be a blessing even when you don't know that it's a blessing. My story is not an easy one, but it is one that glorifies God, and I hope in some way can help someone here that has suffered a loss. So, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to give you a hope and a future. In August of 1999, I had just finished graduate school, and I was looking for a job and a mate. And I had always had a relationship with God, but not one that I would consider as deep as it should be. My sister had told me that she had asked for prayers for me at her Bible study, and one of her friends said for me to read Jeremiah 29:11. As it was, I was reading the Bible back then, and so for a few days I read it, and I thought, oh, that's a great verse. And then I read it again, and I started crying. I knew God had a plan for me. A month later, I got a job in the Pittsburgh Public Schools, and then I met Bill. New Year's Eve 2000 was our very first kiss, and 6 months later, we got engaged, and the rest is history. We were extremely blessed not to have any difficulty getting pregnant. We had our first daughter, Taylor, 1 year and 2 months after we got married. 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant again, and I started bawling. I called my mom. She's like, what is wrong with you? What's the big deal? It's not like you're not married. And I said, but I'm scared. How am I going to love 2 kids, and Taylor's so young and so little? Well, then a few weeks later, I was at school, and I went to the bathroom, and I noticed blood. I called my doctor, and she said, go have a sonogram. I went to the sonogram, and there was no heartbeat, and I was devastated. I had to have a DNC. I found out that that was a little girl, and so I named her Christina. My maiden name is Cristiano, so my daughters both have the middle name Cristiano, and so this one I decided I'll name her Cristiano, hence Christian also. 3 months later, we became pregnant again, and in June of 2004, I had my sweet Lauren, who was just here with me, but she had to leave. So, and of course, like many of you, I'm sure when you go through a loss like that, you question, why did that have to happen? And it wasn't until Lauren was born, and every milestone that she has had, every smile she gives, and the joy that she brings to her dad and I, that we see God's plan for us and for her. In early 2006, we became pregnant again. We were thrilled, as I always wanted to have at least 3 children. At 12 weeks, I went for a sonogram, and I didn't have Bill go with me. I was like, oh, this is the 3rd kid. Everything's, the other ones were fine, no big deal. So I got there to the appointment, got in for the sonogram, and for some reason had a feeling that something was wrong. The technician was very quiet, and she kept taking pictures. I noticed something on the baby's belly. I asked if everything was okay, and she said she needed to go get the doctor. He came in and said that there was a lot of fluid around his nuchal fold behind his neck. That indicates a chromosomal disorder. I remember him saying something about trisomy 18, but I had no idea what that even was. And I couldn't comprehend anything. He said I could wait for 20 weeks and have not an amnio, just a blood test that would be able to tell me. Or if I wanted, I could have a CVS, which was like an amnio cervically, through the cervix. I could have that now. Well, I'm not someone who could wait that long, so I said, no, I want to have it now. So I called Bill, and he works at Highmark. He flew down to be by my side. They did the test, and the doctor, he said, I'm pretty sure it's trisomy 18. And I said, well, what do we do? Because again, I had no idea what trisomy 18 was. He said, well, the main thing is you can terminate. Or you can try to have the baby, but I'm telling you, the baby will not survive. The baby, you'll probably lose the baby in utero. So, that's the chance of survival are slim to none. To say I was devastated was an understatement. I knew I could not terminate. That was not an option for us. It was not my belief, and this was God's child first and foremost. I didn't really, quite honestly, have a say-so, in my opinion. The next day I got the call. Your baby has trisomy 18, and your baby is a boy. I never felt so much joy and sorrow at the same time. I had so many thoughts and questions. I had my girls. How in the world was I going to help them? How was I going to explain all of this to them? I remember telling Taylor, and she said, well, that's okay, Mom, you still have us. Taylor was 4 at the time, Lauren was 2. And I said, you're right, honey. But that night I went to bed and I couldn't sleep. I just kept crying, so I thought, what do? I need to go read the Bible. So I went in the spare bedroom and I started praying. I opened up my Bible, and right there was Luke 1:37, with God nothing is impossible. And I thought, okay, Lord, you've got this. You are going to help me through this. So I knew that that was his plan for me, and I knew that as long as I trusted in him, that I was going to be okay and that our family was going to be okay. As time went on, most of the doctors did not know what to do for me. I was the very first patient that my doctor had that did not terminate the diagnosis. Eventually, I did have another ultrasound, and they said that the main thing that was wrong with him was his heart. They said that later on, like after he was born, that I could have another sonogram or actually a heart echo on him so that we could see what exactly was wrong with him. And then around 27 weeks, I was at my doctor's appointment, and I said to my doctor, I just want to be able to hold him alive. I just really want that. And she said, well, we can deliver him at 30 weeks, like in 3 weeks from then. She said, and that way you'll know that you're going to have him alive. I was ecstatic. I was like, oh, that's wonderful. So I went home and I told Bill, and he's like, whatever you want to do. But then, again, I prayed, and I was like, wait a second, Lord. I didn't terminate at 12 weeks. Why would I terminate at 30 weeks? I said, and then I had this overwhelming sense of peace that God said, if you are strong enough to see him be born and to hold him, it will happen at 40 weeks, and you will know. And I was at peace that if he didn't make it to 40 weeks alive, that I would be okay with that. God knew what was best for me. So I went back and I told my doctor, I'm not going to do it. We're going to go with the original C-section. So after Christian was born, they brought him over to me so I could see him. Bill got to bring him over, and then we had to say goodbye. I was strapped down. If any of you have had C-sections, it's not fun. So I couldn't hold him, but he did put him on my chest, and I got to give him kisses, and probably the best sound ever was when I heard him cry, that I knew, okay, I am going to be able to hold him. So they went and they took him up to the NICU immediately, and to our amazement, he didn't even have to stay there. They looked him over, and he was doing well. The doctors were amazed. And in the middle of the night, the first night, I did, because I was so exhausted, I did have the nurses keep him with them. And I said, if anything goes wrong, please just wake us up. So they woke us up in the middle of the night, and they said that his blood sugar was very low. And one of the doctors came in, and I was talking to him, and he said, well, he's very sick. And I said, well, can you take his blood sugar again? He goes, why? And I said, because he's my son and his blood sugar is low. And he was just blowing me off. And then I said, well, I want to get another heart echo. Well, if it were up to me, you wouldn't get a heart echo. And that was it. I said, it is not up to you. Get out of here now. And I started hyperventilating. Poor Bill didn't know what to do for me. He said to the guy, leave now. So the doctor left. And I realized that I'm going to have to be my child's advocate throughout this whole thing. No one gave him any hope. And I get that, but I still knew that I wanted to do what was best for my son. And we had decided we were not going to have a DNR, but if he had needed a feeding tube, I was going to give him a feeding tube. I was not going to have him just starve to death. So we got another heart echo a couple days later, and they found out that his heart problem, they originally thought it was left hypoplastic heart syndrome, and with that you have to have surgery immediately, but he didn't even have that. I forget, quite honestly, what kind of heart condition he had, but had he not had the trisomy 18, they would have done heart surgery on him. We never expected that we were going to be bringing him home. I did not have a nursery set up. Full disclosure, we did have my niece or my cousin and my mom clean our nursery, but he never went in the nursery. He stayed with me the whole time. All those rules did not apply for Christian. We didn't have a car seat. My friend had to bring a car seat down for us. And we just knew that God had plans for our little guy. And 2 days before Thanksgiving, we brought him home. There was, the day before we brought him home, another doctor was in the hospital with us, and he was talking to us. That's him. And that's my husband. That is my oldest daughter, Taylor. So that picture right there is, there's a foundation. It's called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And it's for babies that have a terminal illness. A professional photographer will come to your hospital and take pictures of you and your family with your child. So, and that was Lauren, who was with me. She just adored that little boy. Oh, she drove him crazy, but she adored him. That was our very first Thanksgiving. We decided we were just going to have a Thanksgiving with the 5 of us. So we had a Thanksgiving, and you can look through them while I'm finishing talking. But this one doctor that we had, I'll never forget his name, Dr. Chico, he came in and he said, listen, you have 2 choices every day when you wake up. You can either wake up and say, is this the day Christian's going to go to heaven? Or, hey, I get another day with Christian. He said, which one's a better one to have? And from then on, that was my doctor who delivered him. From then on, I decided that's right, that's what I am going to do. So every day that I woke up, I thanked God that he was with us still and that I was able to have him here. So that we ended up never even realizing it, but we ended up getting him dedicated. And our girls, that's Ron with the darker hair. So small group. I had a small group that was unbelievable. The one of my small group women, she actually had set up a prayer group. People signed up for an hour from midnight, the night that Christian was born, before Christian was born, until for 24 hours we had someone praying for us. Some of you in this room, I know, were one of those that prayed a whole hour for us. I had terrible epidurals. Taylor, I had 9. Can you pause on that picture for a sec? Yes. Yeah. Taylor, I had 9 pokes. Lauren, I had 3. So that was my big prayer request, that I just they get it the first time. The doctor came in and he was a resident, and I said, goodbye. And he said, no, let me try. And I said, you have 1 try. And praise God, my prayers were answered the very first try, which is truly, it was a miracle. So this was MOP steering. Like I said, I was a part of steering. There's Laura George there, Kristen Hornicle, and Kelly Rush. They were my backbone for me whenever I went through this. I don't know if I could have had the faith without them beside me and praying for me every day and doing the things that they did for me. So We haven't changed it either, which is amazing after 17 years, right? Oh, thank you. So at this point, Bill was a nervous wreck. He wanted to stay in. This is my beauty from ashes. That will be later in the story, but those are my three beautiful kids that are here now. He wanted to stay in. He's like, we're not going anywhere. We are not taking him out. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. We are going, we are pretending that, not pretending, but we are going to make sure that he lives a full life. Like my sister called him Waldo because he went everywhere with us. We got to celebrate Thanksgiving as a family of 5. We celebrated Christmas. We celebrated New Year's Eve. We ended up saying, oh my goodness, it's like a month later and he's still here. Let's celebrate monthly birthdays. So we had monthly birthday parties for him. We had Valentine's Day. I decided Valentine's Day is not about us anymore, it's about our family. So and still to this day, every Valentine's Day, we splurge and have surf and turf and a cake, and we celebrate as a family, not just Bill and I. We celebrate his birthday every year. Every year I send him balloons, and the kids all send him balloons. I took him to MOPS. I as clear as day, I don't know if you guys remember, but I stood up here and he was a peanut. I mean, he was only, I think he made it to 6 pounds for like a day. But I can remember, everyone, this is who you've been praying for. This is Christian. And it was the greatest joy that I had ever had. I don't know if I could ever say I was more proud to be a mom than whenever I was able to show God's love and grace for our family. We took him to dinners, and we, like I said, we got him dedicated. So, as I'm sure you can all imagine, and those of you who have gone through this, there were a lot of fears that I had. My biggest fear was my girls, how I was going to help them, how I was going to take care of them. What if he passed while I had them and it was just the 4 of us? I prayed daily, Lord, just put him from my arms into yours. And it was the hardest thing to trust the Lord in that situation because we didn't know when it was going to happen. And so the night that he passed, it was, God answered all of our prayers. It was a Friday night. The Thursday night, I could tell he was starting to get bad. And I can just remember, it was in the middle of the night, just crying and praying out to God, please, I don't want this to happen, but I don't want him to suffer. And I could tell that he was starting to suffer. They had given me different medicines. I was against giving him morphine. I did give him Ativan because I didn't want him to be anxious when he was breathing. But so Friday came, we put the girls to bed, and that night Bill and I were laying in bed with him, and we were just holding him back and forth, and then we were just holding him together, and maybe for 10 minutes we fell asleep. And we woke up, instantly the 2 of us woke up together, and I looked at him and Bill looked at me and he said, Kim, I think he's gone. And I could tell that he was gone. But it was so peaceful for Christian, and it was peaceful for me and Bill. And everything that I had prayed about, because the girls did not have to see that, but they knew that he was going to be going to heaven, and I was able to let them say goodbye to him, which was such a gift. So we said, well, we're just going to let him stay with us until the morning, because we had to call the hospice nurse and we had to call the caretaker. And so the next day we woke up. Well, I don't think we really slept, but the girls got up and they came running into our room because they always wanted to see Christian first thing. And I somehow God gave me the strength to say to them, girls, guess what? Christian gets to go to heaven today. And they're like, really? And I said, yes. And so they were holding him, and they didn't know he was gone. And it was so beautiful because Christian did look so peaceful, even at that point. And so they got to say goodbye to him. And our next door neighbors they actually go to the church, the Hunters. I'm not sure if any of you know Tim and Sally K. Hunter. They were a huge support system for us also. So I called Sally and I said that Christian passed, and they came and they took the girls, because I didn't want the girls to be there when the caretaker took him. So my parents and Bill's parents came over to say goodbye to him. My brother came over, and our hospice nurse came, and that was another huge blessing. Our hospice nurse was a Christian, so every time that she came to check on Christian, she would pray with us. And I knew that God brought the right person to us. She was such a comforter. To this day, we still send her Christmas cards and show her pictures of our family. And it was such a blessing to have her. She came over to pronounce him, and then the caretakers came, and they took him away for us. Originally, we weren't going to have a viewing because we listened to the doctors who said he's not even going to make it to birth. So what was the point of that? Well, that morning I said to Bill, I think that we need to have a viewing. And he said, I think so too. And we had actually also, before Christian was born, we did all of the funeral arrangements. That was not fun, going to a funeral home, pregnant, planning your child's, funeral arrangements. But I wanted the time, no matter what time I did have with him, to just be joyful. So I did not want to have that burden whenever he was here with us. So we had gotten him cremated also, because I thought, Lord knows, he only knows where we're going to be at someday. So I don't want to have him buried and us not be able to be with him. So he is with us in our house. So we had a viewing. It was a very long, exhausting day, but I remember Laura brought my mom. Laura brought my mom and myself. She makes homemade turtles, and they're so delicious. And of course, my mother-in-law. Do you remember that, Laura? Well, I love turtles. So Laura got her some turtles, made her some turtles too. But I had my MOPS moms. I had my small group. I had my friends. And they were the ones who got me through it. At his, we had the viewing, and then 2 weeks later, we had a service here at church, and he lived 105 days. And so I got 105 rainbow-colored balloons, and we released them all, and I told everyone, when you see a rainbow, I want you to think of Christian. And still to this day, I have friends and family that when they see a rainbow, they send it to me. And it just warms my heart so much that he is still remembered. As those of you who have gone through something like this, I'm sure you feel the same way. So through it all, 3 months later, this is just a very quick, short thing. I could do a whole other talk on our other son, Alec. But 3 months after Christian passed, my husband said, what do you think about adopting? I had asked him before Christian was born if we could adopt. And he said, no, I don't think so. I'm like, okay, fine. And then we got pregnant. And so he said, what do you think about adoption? And I'm like, no, it's too soon. He's like, well, just see about it. Again, I don't want to, it's too long of a story, but 10 months later, Alec was in our lives, and he was home with us, and he brought the joy back into our life that was missing. Any of you who've gone through a loss or a miscarriage know that you can't replace a child. There's no such thing as replacing a child. But he just brings us the joy that we never thought that we would have again. And those of you who are worried about adoption, I know people have fears like, well, I love that child as much as I love one that was my own. We forget, even my girls forget that Alec is adopted because he's ours. And from the moment that we got the call, he was ours. And I know, I see some of you shaking your heads who have kids that are adopted, and it's just, you just can't explain it, but they're yours. And so I don't know any of you, if any of you are worried about that, but I'm sure myself, Laura, and Kelly could talk to you easily about the joy that adoption brings into your life. So I want you to know that if you go through this, you are not alone. Like I said, my MOPS girls, they were the biggest support that I could have ever imagined. When I was driving home after the sonogram, I called Laura first. I called her before I called my mom because I knew that she'd be my prayer warrior. And what can I do for you? I said, just pray. And she did, and she told she was my go-to person because I couldn't talk, so she was able to tell the rest of steering, and they were all, I just can't even begin to explain how phenomenal they were and what a huge help they were. And so again, I encourage you, if you are a part of this group, well, obviously you are a part of this group, stay with it. Those days that your kids are driving you nuts and you don't want to come because you just want to stay home and curl up, especially with the cold weather coming, come. They will love on you and they will be there for you. Our small group was amazing. They went through this whole ordeal with us. One of the moms, like I said, Nikki, she had the prayer group for us, and we truly were covered for a full 24 hours. Meals, my one friend organized meals, and we literally had meals from the day after Thanksgiving until Christmas. I never once had to worry about a meal, and people were just so kind. But I wanted everyone to come in and meet him. Like, they were just, oh, I'll just leave it at the door. I'm like, nope, get in here. I have probably 2,000, 3,000 pictures of Christian, and every single person that met Christian, I made them take their picture with them. And then when Christian passed, I had meals from, he passed March 3rd, and I had meals from then until Easter. And it was just such a huge, huge blessing for us. Struggles. So this is, as some of you, unfortunately, I know, I'm sure, husband and wives grieve differently. Husbands do not understand what we go through. They want to, but they don't. When we found out that Christian had trisomy 18, I was 7 months pregnant before Bill even touched my belly. And Taylor and Lauren, he talked to them immediately. He would come over, hi baby, hi sweetheart. We didn't know what we were having, but with Christian we did. So at 7 months, when he finally touched my belly and felt him kick, I started crying, and he said, what's wrong? I said, this is the first time that you've even acknowledged. And he said, really? Like, he didn't even know. And so I was on he was on this page. Once Christian was born, we started getting closer, and I'll never forget, he was holding him and he was crying, and he said, I finally understand what you've been going through the past 9 months. I was like, thank you, Lord. Because it's so hard. You feel so alone. You don't want to be alone, but no one, I think us as moms, as soon as you hear you're pregnant, you're a mom, right? As soon as you hear that heartbeat, you've got that instant connection. He he couldn't connect that. And his focus was, I've got to take care of the bills, I've got to work, I've got to take care of Taylor and Lauren whenever I get home because she's exhausted. And it's always been hard. Even after Christian passed, we grieve completely differently. Like, he does the balloons for me, which is wonderful, but I know that probably if it were up to him, he wouldn't. I was giving him balloons on his anniversary of his passing, but then I stopped that because that's a celebration. As hard as it is to think about, that's the day that he got to meet Jesus. And again, that prayer that I had, I just visually see him going from my arms straight into the Lord's. So I don't want to grieve on his passing day, because to me, that's the day that he became healed. That is the day that he has everlasting peace. But there were plenty of nights that I went to bed crying and just so upset, because why can't Bill be crying right next to me? Like, he should be crying too. Why is he not crying? Why is he not upset? And I did the one thing that they say you should never do, but I talked to my mom about our fighting. And you're not supposed to talk to your parents about issues in your marriage, right? But I had to talk to someone. And my mom gave me the best advice. She said, Kim, first and foremost, do you think the Lord would want you to be fighting over the gift that he gave you? And she said, and secondly, how do you think Christian would feel if he knew that because of his situation, you and Bill were fighting? It's like, darn it, Mom's right again. Like, we never, we hate to admit that our moms are right, but she was right again. And so I'm not going to lie, still to this day, every birthday and passing day are a struggle for me with Bill, but I know that he did love, and he does love Christian, and I know that I have to just accept that we're made completely different. And as Ron said even yesterday, you've got to give it to the Lord. He's going to fight your battle. No one else will. And that is a daily reminder. So things that I learned throughout this process, only God knows when our time is up. We all think that doctors know everything. We listen to the doctors. Oh, you need to terminate because he's not gonna be born. Well, we fooled the doctors, didn't we? And when after Christian passed, I had gone to see my doctor, and she said the best thing that someone could have ever said to me. She said, I have to be honest with you. You totally changed how I will counsel women in the future. And that just brought me so much joy that, okay, like, people can see that there is hope. Was it easy? It was the hardest thing in the world for me to have to do. However, because we chose Life for Christian, my girls are better people, Bill and I are better people. I can hopefully help others that are going through this. And I wouldn't have had the memories that I have with him. Like the memory, and honestly, I don't think I would have Alec, because I don't know if we would have. And in fact, after Christian passed and we started going through the process of adopting Alec, we were on vacation, and I was late. And my husband's like, oh, I'm sure it's just because, we're out of the country, blah, blah, blah. I get back in the country, I take a test, and sure enough, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh my goodness. Again, I started bawling. And he goes, oh, I guess we're going to stop the adoption. And I'm like, why? He said, well, because you're pregnant. And I'm like, but what was our reasoning for adopting? And he said, to give a child a better life. Christian taught us so much about how precious life is. And so we decided, that was another reason we decided to adopt. Yep, we could have tried again, but we said, no, let's give a child a better life. Not us, but he was born in Guatemala. We wanted to bring him to the U.S. And he looked at me and he goes, so said, we're having twins, aren't we? And I said, yes, we are. But unfortunately, I did miscarry that one as well. But God got us through that. And I cannot imagine our lives without Alec in it now. I know a lot of you probably have a hard time with what to say to someone whenever you hear that they are going through something terrible. I can remember us being somewhere and I have 2 girls in my hand and people, oh, do you know what you're having? Oh, I'm having a boy. Oh, you must be thrilled. And inside I'm like, oh, you have no idea what, and I would just, yes, yeah, I am. And, but I know that it's very hard for people to know what to say. So my advice to you is say what is ever on your heart. Pray about it first. Always pray and ask the Lord to lead you in what you want to say. I can honestly say there were times whenever someone would be talking to me and they would ask me something and the Lord was speaking through me. I know that it was not my words and I was giving them comfort, but I know that it all came from the Lord. So I encourage you to just pray whatever you want to say and just talk to them. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Moms will tell you if they can't talk about it, but don't ever ignore it. That's probably the worst thing that you can do is to ignore it, because ignoring it makes it feel like it's not, the child wasn't important. And every child is important. Every child is a gift from God. My best friend from college, every Christian's birthday every year, she gives me a gift for his birthday. There's not a birthday that hasn't gone by that Laura texts me and says, I love you. Happy birthday, sweet Christian. Those things mean the world to me because I never want him forgotten. And as hard as it is, stay positive. Only God knows when our time is up. Like I said, in some ways, in a very weird, odd way, we were privileged, if that's a word to even use, that we knew he wasn't going to survive, because how many have gone through a baby that was SIDS, that the carpet is just pulled out from underneath them, or a stillborn. We were blessed in that we didn't take one day for granted with him, because we knew what the end was going to be. So just try your hardest to stay positive. And those days when the kids are ready to get on your last nerve, or they already have been on your last nerve, kneel down and pray and thank God that you have them, because those who have lost would give anything for that, to have that. So what I pray for you that you got from this is to seek God first when going through something, anything. He will carry you through it, and he will give you unexplainable peace. That is the biggest thing that I can truly say, is the Lord gave me unexplainable peace. I'm not saying that as you can see, 17 years later, I still get upset, but he gives me the peace to get through it all. Never hide your feelings. So much difficulty knowing what to say to others when asked how many people that, people ask me, oh, how many kids do you have? A couple of times I've said 3. Most of the time I say 3 and 1 in heaven. But whenever I've just said 3, I look up at Christian and you know that I haven't forgotten you. And this necklace that I have on, it has all my kids' names, but this was the first necklace, and my husband just got this for me for Mother's Day, that it just has a C on it for Christian instead of his whole name, because you just don't know what to do. And, a mother has guilt. Well, let me tell you, you have even more guilt whenever you go through a situation like that. And I will say, though, pray. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, was our verse once Christian was born, because every day I woke up, how am I going to do this? And praise God, he gave me the strength to get through each and every moment. And I would not have gotten through it without the prayers and the support. I would like to pray for us, and then if you have questions, I would be very happy to answer anything. Heavenly Father, we just give you thanks and praise for this day. Lord, I ask you to please watch over all these moms. Every single child that you have given us, Lord, is a precious gift from you. Lord, please especially be with the moms who have lost someone, one of their children, whether through miscarriage or birth. Lord, help us to have unexplainable peace from you, that they are healed and happy with you, Lord, and they have more enjoyment and life in them than we could ever imagine. Lord, I pray that this talk today has been able to reach out to someone in need, and that they can draw closer to you through it all. We love you, Lord, and we give you thanks. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I'm ready for questions. It was tough to go after Lindsay from last week, I got to tell you. That was such a beautiful, upbeat, and this is dark for us. It's deep for us. So I had told Kristen, my email and my phone number are on the pages. So if you want to talk to me privately, please reach out and text me or email me, call me, whatever you would like.